All right, we're live. Hey guys, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. Just 1 second, I'm setting up the chat here so that I can see if you guys have questions and all of that. All right, just let me check. So cool, we are live, and where's the chat? Here we go. All right. Hey, intraterrestre, how you doing? Sergio Kosov, Sergey. Привет, как дела? David Díaz, hey, un saludo de Colombia, hola, ¿qué tal? Hey Eric, how's everyone going? Excellent. All right. Cool, so we have audio and we have video. Alrighty. Cool, so today, don't have anything like specific to do. I mean, it is a specific, but not in a specific workflow. So I thought we can just do kind of like a prop, like an asset. But you know, since there is so many things that you can, or like so many processes that you can use in ZBrush to create whatever you want, I just thought we just go through a few different things or a few different ways to achieve the same thing, just to give you ideas. And ultimately, it's either what works for your workflow, what you feel comfortable with, or what is going to speed up your workflow in general. So we're just gonna do a guitar, something like that, as a prop, and then the focus is more on the workflows and exploring different tools. So just to give you guys ideas on how to use the new tools as well, and that sort of thing. Not everything is gonna be new, but you know. And again, I have a rough idea of what could be, I mean, what we could do, but yeah, I'm just gonna wing it and just try different things and achieve the same thing, or try to achieve the same thing with different processes, and hopefully one of those is gonna be the best one. Estran López, hola desde México, hola, ¿qué tal? David desde Argentina. Great, a lot of Spanish-speaking people today. That's awesome. By the way, guys, if you, I'm not sure if you are aware, but last Friday, I was with Daniel Bell in his YouTube channel as well, and it's in Spanish as well. So if you interested in some Spanish, some content in Spanish, maybe you can have a look at that as well. Alrighty. So what I'll do is I'm gonna bring in a reference to what we're gonna do today. Again, it's just a classical guitar. Here we go. So that's roughly what I'm going to do. And the reason I chose this, for no other reason other than I think it's a good example of an object that has different surfaces and different geometry or shapes that can be achieved in a bunch of different ways, right? So let's go ahead and start with the body of the guitar. And again, there's many different ways to do it. I'm gonna approach it in kind of like in a sketchy way first. Then we can do a more controlled version. We'll see what happens. I want to start with the most sketchy one of all, and then we'll take it from there. So let's go ahead and bring in the spotlight. I'm going to turn off or reduce the opacity a little bit. And we're going to concentrate just on the body for the moment. So I'm going to scale this up. Something like that. And yeah, that looks good. And I'm going to make sure, just in case, that I have spotlight projection off. By the way, so by default, let me just show you something that it's kind of annoying if you don't know about it. If you have the spotlight, which is this tool that ZBrush has to edit images within ZBrush to use them as a reference, or to project color and that sort of thing. if you have a spotlight on, like I do right now, and you try to use certain brushes, I don't know why this one shouldn't work actually. Interesting. It shouldn't work, or maybe they changed that. No, but it shouldn't work. Anyway, if you try to sculpt this and it doesn't work, it would work with the move brushes with no problem. But if you try to work with the standard brush and you have spotlight on, you might find, let's actually let's try to do something. Let's change the opacity. There we go. So the reason it was working is because I had it right in front of the object. So ZBrush was assuming that I want to project some color. But basically, if you have this as a reference and you want to try to sculpt, you'll see nothing happens on the sphere. With the standard brush, if I use the move brush, it actually works. But with any other sculpting brush, the damn standard brush, and it's just I'm pressing and nothing happens. That is because under the brush palette, let's just put that here on the right so you can see. If you go to the samples subtab, you have this spotlight projection. So if you toggle this by default should be on, like I have it here. If you toggle this off, then you're basically telling ZBrush that you don't want to use this spotlight, or you don't want to interfere with the sculpting when the spotlight is on. So you can actually sculpt. So if you ever try to sculpt with anything, with any brush, and you have spotlight selected, make sure that spotlight projection is off. And the spotlight projection is basically what I had before, right? So that I can project those details. So now I need to turn this back on if I want to project, let's say, the texture and that sort of thing. Hopefully that makes sense. Yep. But again, I think what I was gonna say about that is I have this edit spotlight macro, and this is a custom macro that I made, and basically what it tells ZBrush is that I wanna be able to edit the spotlight, but at the same time it toggles off the spotlight projection, what I just showed you. So it's just a simple macro that saves a couple steps. All right, let's see. What platform for the chat in this screen? Oh, for the chat on the screen is I'm actually using a tool called what's the name? I should look it up here. Restream. So that's what the Pixology guys use, so that this can be sent to different platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So that's the one that I use, the one on the screen, the one here on top. But I use OBS to put that restream, like embed that chat on top. Hey Julius, saludos de Bogotá, hola, ¿qué tal? This Comics Legend. Oh, Spicer McLero, how you doing, man? Great to have you here. Comics Legend, Spicer. Yes, exactly. Spicer, the legend himself. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and, oh no, we started with some issues today. My tablet just went. So anyway, I'm gonna use the oh, come on. So basically, yep, so my tablet is gone. So I'm gonna have to come back. So give me 1 second, I'll be back. I'm gonna restart ZBrush and the tablet. I'll be back. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Don't know why the tablet is giving me so much trouble lately. And I'm 100% sure it has to do with OBS, and everything is up to date, so I don't know what else to do other than resetting every time that it happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something like that and actually start doing something. Okay, just gonna double check. All right, cool. So actually, let's change the opacity. All right, so the first thing that I'm gonna try, like I say, it's just a simple sketch, like you would approach anything like a very dirty type of sketch, and then I'm gonna go ahead and create the shapes of it. So I'm gonna bring in my transpose master, and although it looks kind of like a spherical shape, it's more like a flat thing. So just gonna try to get something closer to the shape, something like that. By the way, you can also import it as an image plane, and then yeah, that will be kind of like to trace it in a way. I'm gonna hold Control and click and drag just to do the other part and scale it like that. All right, and then clear. And this is if I turn this off, this is a Dynamesh. So I'm gonna click and drag to Dynamesh that, and I'm using symmetry as well, so I can smooth this out. So now that this is a horrible shape for a guitar, but again, it's like the sketchy version of how would I approach something like this. Even though it is kind of like let's call it a hard surface thing, you can still, you know, that for me at least, there's no difference between doing a hard surface model or an organic model. The sketching process is the same, and establishing the silhouettes is the same, unless you want to start with a super clean mesh from the beginning. It gets to a point that when you have the volumes ready and everything, to a point that you're happy with as a concept sketch, you can move to, you know, polishing that concept into a more hard surface, with more hard surface processes, or more organic. So in that sense, there's no change. So what I'm going to do now is try to position this almost in the middle, just eyeballing it, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on the lock camera that I have here on the left of my UI, so that I don't move the camera at all. And with the move brush, I'm going to bring in the AccuCurve as well, and symmetry. I'm just going to adjust the shapes of this. We can change to a different material, maybe this one, so we can see a bit better what's happening. So you see, it's just little nudges to get to the shape. And of course, we can hold Control, click and drag to Redynamesh. And now we have something, you know, relatively okay. Now we need to keep in mind that, let's pull this off. Actually, before I do anything, I'm gonna go ahead and I think I need to, let me just double check. Restored custom UI. Nope, I think I lost some of the, I've been trying to redo my UI, so I lost a couple of buttons here. So if I go to the draw palette, let's go to not document palette. Is it document? No, I forgot what it is. I've had it for a long time in my UI, so now I don't remember what it is. I need to find it. I think it's in document. It should be document. Oh, hang on. I know what's happening. Perspective. Yep. Camera lock. Alright. So now if I go to draw, what happened with my camera? Well, I forgot what that is. Anyway, it was here on my UI, not a big deal. I need to remember what that is. If you guys remember, let me know so I can come back and put it back into my UI. Anyway, so let's go ahead and toggle this off. And what I was saying is, you gotta remember that you're doing this in a 3D object. So all of these changes, as you can see, they're kind of like done, like they're different from the front from the back. So just to make sure that I'm doing this in a better way, what I'm going to do is just scale this like that, so there's less of a margin of, you know, for error. Let's redynamish that. So let's go back to what we had. So now we can see it's almost there, and then we can just readjust this. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to remove, hang on, I want to mask this area, and I'm just going to give it a different polygroup. And I'm going to bring in the polish by groups just to get something cleaner there. Yeah, so the only reason I did that is so that when I put it here from, or turn around and see it from the front, and bring in this, the spotlight, I don't see any of the other polygroup, any of the green polygroup, just to make sure that the shape is actually working fine. All right, so now that we have that, what I'll do is, I don't have a reference for the thickness. Actually, I should have checked that, but we're gonna eyeball it. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the polyframe, select that one, the blue one. I'm gonna mask that, invert that mask, and now I'm gonna invert that mask, sorry. Bring in the gizmo, and I'm gonna hold Control and click, and I'm extruding that area. I can also do that with the deformer, so with the extensor, or the extender, I think it is. Let's just do that, just to show you a different technique. We can use from the cog icon here and the Gizmo 3D, this one right here, the extender. We can click on that, and you'll see that, let's turn this off, the blue dot right in the middle, that's determining the splitting point. So I'm going to click on this to extend it like so, and you see this blue point is basically to change that middle point, but right in the middle is fine. I mean, we split those in an awkward thing, but it doesn't matter. This is just to get us started. All right, you can also add, I think it's with this yellow one, you can add creasing, and you can add multiple edge loops or resolution with this one. So depending on the axis that you extruded or that you extended, in this case I'm using it on the Z axis, right? If I turn on the floor, you can see that at the bottom, that line in there. So that means that in the Z axis I can take this icon, the cone, and I can basically add multiple edge loops. Again, doesn't really matter at this point. This is just a sketch, and I don't want to have any creasing, so I'm going to take this yellow cone down, click on the cog icon, and accept. All right, so we have this blob now, but it's getting there. So now we can take the flatten, and the flatten is pretty much the same. We can enable symmetry, so if you hover over, again, because I have the same axis over the Z axis, if you push it forward, no, actually, yeah, forward all the way, the difference between 1 and 2, you see that number at the bottom roughly, is changing between mirroring, symmetry with mirror, and symmetry like inverted, like the usual way of the symmetry. So if I move this cone, now I have symmetry in both sides. If I change this to 1, you'll see it's just kind of like a mirror So it's pushing it at the same, on the same side. So we're gonna go for 2, and obviously push this down like that, almost there. So this is gonna determine the thickness of that guitar, and you see just I mean, even though it's very sketchy, we're starting to get something that looks a lot better. You can also use this cone here to add to slice the topology. So that means if you look at this, although in this case it's not very obvious, just because I actually flatten it all the way to the next polygroup. But anyway, I'm happy with this. Let's click on OK. And now we have the body. Of course, there are some things here, that's some artifacts, but that's just the result of the polygrouping. So what we can do is a couple of things. So we can bring in the polish by groups, and that just basically is going to respect those groups. This part in here, we can actually mask that polygroup and try to do it manually, just to smooth out some of these points around. Same thing on the other side. So I'm just using this normal smooth brush to smooth the borders. And now you see that we have actually a bunch of polygroups, right? We have these blue ones here, this other semi-blue color all around the pink one, and we have those polygons in there. So that's fine. We can easily fix that in just a second. I just want to double check that any of the changes that I made is not changing the silhouette, right? So I think it's looking good. Let's have a look and see if you guys have any questions about that. How to disable the left click to move the camera? Don't know. Probably from the preference. I don't know if it can be done, but I'm sure. I haven't actually tried it. Saludos desde Lima. Hola Renzo. Spicer McLeroy. Gotta support my fellow. Thanks, man. No worries, man. I'm really glad that you found the email useful. The command missing, the camera commands are missing because of the perspective mode. No, I'll check that. I mean, there is you should be able to see the buttons. It's just that if you don't have if you have perspective off, you won't be able to save the camera, which is different. But I think it's just like I'm missing a couple of buttons here as well. You see this one that I had before. I don't know for some reason it's not loading. It's something to do with my UI. All right, awesome. Anyway, so let's clean this up again so that we can work on maybe a different object or a different method. This is still pretty simple, and we can simplify it a lot more and then decide which one we want. So now that we have this, we know for sure that this is a flat surface. So if we turn around, this is pretty flat, same as this one. Same way, you know, this is not flat, but it's the contour, let's say, is flat. So we can use a process called the polygroup by normal. So on the polygroup palette, if I just go ahead and click on group by normals, just with the default values, by default we have a 45-degree angle. So basically this is telling ZBrush that create a new polygroup based on the surface with as soon as it finds a difference of more than or 45 or more than 45 degrees. So if I click on group normals, because this is pretty much a 90-degree angle, you know, from the border to the other surfaces. So I'm gonna click on group my normals. So now I have a group right in the front of the camera, another one that goes all around, and another one for the back. So now I have 3 polygroups. That's pretty much all I need. All right. So now we can go ahead and use again the polish by groups. slightly, right? And you'll see that sort of polishes those and gives us some nice borders, right? And this is still super sketchy, but we got the, you know, the shape right. All right. Of course, we need to add that hole in there. So let's go ahead and do that. The sound hole for the guitar. So let's bring in that again, and maybe it's a good opportunity to double check the size. Now there's something that is really useful that I haven't used much, to be honest, but I know it's useful especially for these type of things, which is the infinite depth, and I can't remember what that is, but I would assume maybe it's on the brush palette, because it's a brush thing. So let's go to depth. Yeah, it's here. So the infinite depth, what it's going to do is kind of like create like some sort of, it will take whatever you're doing, whatever tool you're using, and it's going to create kind of like a tube, infinite tube vision in a way, so that anything that you do is going to work in that axis. So let me just show you, because it's easy to explain. Sorry, to show and explain. So if I enable infinite depth, now I can move this point in here. Just pay attention to what's going to happen along that z-axis, which is, you know, this one, the way that the guitar is facing. So if I move this, you see I'm moving everything on that axis, even though I'm just moving some points in here, right? So this is super useful. If I toggle this off, obviously I'm just using the move brush to move these points, but with infinite depth, I'm moving the entire, you know, surrounding. So this is super cool, because now we can go ahead and adjust this with more precision, right? We just move these points based on the camera, but we know for a fact that everything is moving at the same time, like the whole points on that radius in a way, and that's what the infinite depth does. And this is something new. I think it's from 2019. I can't remember. Maybe not. Maybe 2000 or 2020. Maybe 2020. Okay. So you see, there's no distortion around the border. Great. Okay. So of course the topology is not great. We can do a series measure, but before we do that, we can go ahead and do the sound hole of the guitar. So let's position that roughly there. Okay. And we're going to use the symmetry to just mask an area. We don't have a lot of geometry, but that's all right. Actually, let's increase the dynamic resolution a little bit, so that we can create a precise hole in here. And we're gonna keep groups for the dynamesh, and maybe polish a little bit. Let's redynamesh. Oops, maybe that is too much. Okay, so if you're getting these errors, something really weird is happening with my ZBrush. Let's see. Everything's fine. I don't know what's going on with the groups. Anyway, so let's just redynamesh with a bit more resolution. That's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's go ahead and go back to the poly groups here. Group by normal. Run the same process. We can use the polish by groups again, just to sharpen those edges. And we're back. So again, super sketchy. Hang on, this didn't do the right poly group. I'm just gonna use the flatten again, just to make sure that I get those polygroups. Interesting. I'm gonna have to do it manually. You know what? Let's just undo that because it wasn't working. Let's go back. All right. So this is what we have. And it doesn't matter that we don't have Dynamesh. We're gonna do the whole and then we're gonna deal with the rest. I mean, this is the whole idea of what I want. Not planning that this would happen, but I was planning to show you a different process anyway and how to deal with those. So let's have something like that. Activate symmetry. And I'm gonna hold Control. I'm just gonna mask that area. It's not gonna be super precise. But I'm gonna create a polygroup in there. And let's also polish by groups. So now we have this very precise or very sharp edge. I'm gonna also mirror and weld the whole thing just so that I'm sure that there is symmetry. And I think I did a pretty good job. Excellent. I thought I had to tweak it, but anyway, if you want to tweak it from this angle, you can just use the move brush and tweak that. So I think that works. If you want to be super precise about this, again, this is the sketchy way of doing this. But if you want to be super precise, what you can do is bring in a cylinder and then create an intersection of that, or even a boolean of that, just to have a perfect circle. Okay, so now that I have that for the body of the guitar, I'm going to hold Control and Shift, select that polygroup, invert that, and I'm going to delete hidden. And that's it, really. Let's see. What else do we have in the body that we need to recreate? Nah, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, the bridge, what's the name of this thing? The saddle and the bridge and all of that, and the neck of the guitar. That's obviously easier to do separate subtools, but again, I'm going to show you a couple more ways to recreate the body of the guitar. We have plenty of time. Anyway, in this more sketchy way to do it, which is Dynamesh and Move Brush and all of that, we have the body ready to go. It's an open geometry and single-sided. So what we can do is create a zero measure. So let's go ahead and duplicate that, turn that off. I have symmetry enabled. I have the zero measure, and I'm gonna leave adaptive on. I'm gonna keep groups, and I'm gonna try it with a smooth one. I don't think we need to smooth anything because everything is by default smooth since we use the polygroup, this polygroup slider. Not polygroup, polish by groups. So let's just leave it like that and detect edges, zero mesh, and now we have a nice zero measure of that, which is great. Let's try it again to simplify it even more. Great. I think that works. I think that works just fine. Yeah, it's actually pretty decent topology. You can smooth this out a little bit. Same thing here at the back, right? But at this point, what we can do, just adjusting the edges. At this point, what we can do is, again, use the polish by groups. So again, that's just gonna polish. Maybe that was too much. I'm gonna use a little bit of polish, normal polish. Nope. The polish slider is pretty strong, so I'm just gonna use polish by features and a bit of polish by groups, and maybe a clay polish. No. All right. So just the polish by groups and polish by features would work. However, we get in this, distortion here. There's again, I'm just thinking about different ways of approach this. Maybe a cool way to do it would be, to recover that sort of like straight area, which is actually just a matter of taking the two polygroups for the back and front and then just scaling down. But I'm just thinking about different ways to do it that could be cool to show you. I'm gonna select this. I wanna try something. So I just mask everything by this, but this. I'm gonna use the dynamics in ZBrush and see if I can do something with that. Disable gravity, and what I'll do is I'm gonna add firmness to it to maximum, and I'm gonna use the inflate, which is kind of like pumping air into it. But because I mask everything else, it should work. So let's run simulation. Maybe reduce the firmness a bit. All right. Obviously, it just does it all the way, but let's try that again. It's kind of inflating everything. All right. By the way, this is what I'm showing you right now. This is how I test ZBrush. So I try different things and see if, what works. All right. Anyway, that was just what I thought it could be an easy way to do it, but it's just gonna be easier if I actually enable the Z symmetry so that I can do that in both axes. And it's just a little bit anyway. And this is not probably gonna be the final one. We have to tweak it again. Right? Now, this is just if you want to do it like that. Obviously, you can do many different things. You can just go back and bridge that, and I'll show you that because it's gonna be cleaner anyway. But oops, let's go back to the shape that we had because we kind of like destroyed that. So let's go back to infinite depth. So we can play around with this, with the outline. Get it back to where we had it before. The sound hole is fine as well. All right. So obviously, if you want to have a very flat, let's say, very polished surface, right now, I mean, it's all right, but it's not great. Obviously, you can do that. So the easiest way at this point would be to just delete that polygroup. So let's delete hidden, and then we can just bring in the C-modeler, and we can tell ZBrush that we want to bridge these two holes. So we can right click. I'm going to do it without symmetry. Right click, bridge two holes. I'm going to click on this point and then click on that one, and that created perfect flat topology that we can reuse. So I'm going to assign a polygroup to that, maybe a different color. So now we have exactly the same thing that we had before, but now this is polished. So like I said, there's different ways to do the same thing. I was just trying to to do something a bit too complicated, but again, it's good to try that. All right, so now that we have this is pretty much the body of the guitar ready. I'm gonna duplicate that just in case, and I'm gonna get closer. Because I want to refine the sound hole a little bit because it's not very round. I mean, it's alright, but it's not perfect. Alright. Lock the camera. Make sure I have infinite depth. So I'm just going to use this image as reference to follow it. And like I said, if you want something perfect, I'll show you another way to do it in a second. But this is pretty close anyway. All right. Cool. So now we can go ahead and tweak this a little bit, make it more interesting. The first thing that I would do probably is let's make use of the dynamic subdivision. So under the geometry palette, I'm going to open up dynamic subdiv, click on dynamic just to soften everything. And from the dynamic properties, we can obviously do a lot of things. With the new ZBrush 2021, we have this ability to add thickness, which is awesome, right? So what I'll do is find the right thickness that I want based on what I can see here on this hole. So I'm gonna go for something like that. Where's, I thought I had the guitar somewhere here so that I could see roughly what the thickness was. Anyway, something like that, right? I think I don't have any reference for the guitar. Anyway, all right. So I'm gonna leave it like that. This is interactive, so, or it's not applied, so I can change it at any point. Of course, what I want to do is apply the thickness inwards, because now this is getting kind of like the thickness is scaling everything a little bit. I mean, it's not too bad, but if you want, you can just change the offset to -100, and that's basically, I don't know if you saw that, but you change that thickness to be inward from the surface or from the initial point. So you can either push it all the way up. Right now, the thickness is happening right in the middle, so it's adding volume up and down from that initial state. -100 is just gonna push it in. Also, I'm gonna change the subdivision, so I'm gonna add 3, maybe 4 levels of subdivision. So now we have something pretty smooth with this preview, but the border is not as sharp. So what we can do is either add 1 Q grid, but that's gonna show us some polygroups. Yeah, it's not gonna be great. So let's just leave it as it is. And instead, what we can do is, let's turn this off for the time being. I'm gonna use the C modeler to click and drag. I'm gonna right click on an edge. Right click on an edge, click on insert, single edge loop. I'm gonna click and drag, get it closer. So that's gonna obviously sharpen those edges, and this is a nice perfect poly loop all around. So I can also do the same thing. So I can click and drag like so, just to sharpen those edges. And now we have a pretty clean topology with thickness and everything. And again, this is a pretty low res mesh. We're just previewing it with this dynamic subdivision. Obviously the hole, I think, is getting bigger as well. Yeah, so something we can do is just sharpen these with creases. So we can right click and select crease, the entire edge loop. Click on that and you'll see it just adds those dotted lines in there. I just want to double check because I had, no, that's fine. Cool. So now if I enable dynamic, you see that size remains the same. Perfect. So a quick save. So yeah, that is the starting point of that guitar. I know it took a while to get it there, but you go from something, you know, very sketchy that at the end of the day is actually really simple to set up, to something that is pretty clean and is low res as well. So if you're planning to do, I don't know, anything with maps or UVs, you also have polygroups, so you can UV map the whole thing. We might get to that as well, right? But that's the base. Now let's go ahead and do a couple more options. Again, just want to give you different ideas. So let's go ahead and start with, I'm going to append a ZSphere. Let's try with a ZSphere. Why not? Something like that. I'm just going to put it here at the bottom. Enable symmetry, and I'm going to bring in, yeah, I already have the draw enable. So I'm going to add, hang on, turn this off. I'm going to add the first one, hold shift, and by holding shift, ZBrush is going to create exactly the same size as the previous ZSphere. And I'm just going to go around, let's set up some points actually, before I do any arrangements. Click, hold shift, Right, so I just created a bunch of ZSpheres in there. So I'm gonna put try to set it very symmetrical. I'm gonna take the first one, drop it around there, and take this one, just to try to establish the silhouette again. Right, so pretty straightforward use of the ZSpheres, but then I can add a few more. I don't know, it's not adding symmetrically. All right, for some reason it's not adding them here. Don't know why. Anyway, we can just go ahead and tweak that. Doesn't matter because at the end I'm gonna do a mirror and weld. All I want to do is just a rough pass with the ZSpheres to get the curvature of the guitar, or the profile. But yeah, that sounds good, or that looks good. Let's go to the adaptive skin, and I'm going to set the density to 1, and I don't want to have any dynamesh. Just want to have a dynamic resolution to 0, so that way ZBrush is going to use the the normal subdivision approach, which I like. So if I preview that, it's going to be pretty clean in terms of topology. So let's go ahead and click on Make Adaptive Skin. So that creates a new tool. That one there. I'm going to copy that, go to my working file, paste that, turn that off, the ZSpheres. So now what I'll do is I'm going to use the Move brush, the Move Topological brush, sorry. And also let's unify that because it's huge. And I'm going to push this a bit, right? So now I can mirror first and then mirror and weld. And what's happening here? Let's do mirror and weld again. I think we need to push all of these things. Hang on, let me do an auto group this as a weird group in the delete hidden. So all I'm doing really is just to create another kind of like middle line in there. So now we can mirror and weld. This is around here, sorry. There we go. All right. So that's really all I wanted to create, just a simple rounded shape for the guitar. And that is just to create that very simple loop. I'll check the chat because I see some activity and haven't actually checked. Give me 1 second, I just want to finish this one up. So all I did with the ZSpheres really is just to get a path in a way, and then from that I can extract a single edge loop or a single poly loop that I can reuse in topology. So let's bring in the C modeler, right click on an edge. I'm going to use the bevel option, and the reason I'm going to use the bevel option is because if you look at this from the side, right, this edge that is right at the top is kind of like it's in an angle, so I wanted something flat. So if I bevel this, I'm gonna get straight away almost a flat angle in there, and that's really all I want. So now I can hold Control and Shift to split that, make sure, yep, it's just that one, and I can delete hidden, and hopefully you can see what I'm going with this. Now I can bring in the gizmo, center to the unmasked areas, and I'm going to flatten on the z-axis, so using the scale to flatten that, right? So now I can just try to reposition this using the Move brush. I don't have to use infinite depth or anything because this is just a single mesh. Make sure symmetry is enabled. And doing it this way, you can ensure as well that you have a clean topology, kind of like, or a nice topology flow from the very beginning, just the kind of like the edge. So again, this is just, you might see that there's some processes or whatever I show you, you might think, oh, this is just easier to do it this way, or oh, this is gonna take ages. I prefer the more sketchy approach, have more freedom to explore shapes. But that's the whole idea, right? About these live sessions, make it happen in ZBrush. There's many ways of doing the same thing. Just try to give you a few options, and then you can find whatever works for your workflow. All right, so now we have this flat loop that we can use to add, the rest. So let's see the chat, and then I'll show you the next stage. Hang on, I think I missed a few chats. Greetings. Pablo, for an object like a guitar, would you suggest maybe using the Shadowbox feature? Rarely ever get used. It's very handy. Yeah, like I said, many different options. So you can definitely use that. You can start with a simple plane and just mask an area and then extrude that as well. There's so many different things you can do. I'm just trying to show you like a few options. I'll show you a few more as well, but there's many ways. It's at the end of the day, is whatever works for you. And if the Shadowbox makes your life easier and gives you the result that that you want, why not? Mirror and well, maybe. Yep, I think I did that. How can I get your UI? You can get a whole bunch of UIs that I made from the ZBrush guide. So if you go to the ZBrush guides website, to the UI section in the resources, you can grab them from there. This one I don't share it just because I have a bunch of macros that don't really make sense for I'll have to share the macros, explain how they work. So it's just a hassle, and ultimately a UI is very personal. Please show us how to do a bevel edge. I think I showed that as well with the dynamic. But you can use also the bevel function, like I showed you at the beginning of this ZSphere path. You can bevel with that as well. Andrés Córdoba, acabo de terminar. Excellent. So Andrés just finished the 5-day challenge. That's awesome. Make sure that you share it online with the hashtag that I shared, so that I can see it as well. I haven't checked the Instagram. To be fair, I'm trying to cut down on social media a little bit. Not that I want to get out of it, because that's my primary form of contact with you guys as well. But so I'm not basically looking at it every single day. So I'll get to it, and I'll respond as many as I can. Dynamic, delete edge loops. Cool. All right, awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with this. What I would do in this case is to set up the loops, and this is kind of like the approach that I would take if I'm retopologizing, which I don't like, but I try to do this in a fun way, even if I don't like the process. What I would do to retopologize a face, I would start by placing the edge loops and the flow of the topology first, and then I will combine or fill in the areas. So of course, what we need, we already have the edge. What we need now is to append maybe a circle, obviously. Let's get out of solo. So this is going to be the one for that hole. So let's set this up again, roughly like that. Scale. So this is going to determine the size of that hole. Yeah, that looks good. Let's bring that one closer. All right, and now what we can do is merge these two together. So I'm gonna merge down those, bring in the gizmo, make sure that I flatten those on the Z-axis to make sure, again, they're on the same plane in a way. Cool. So now that I have that geometry, I'm gonna simplify it. Just bring in the C modeler, right click on an edge, click on delete, and I'm gonna delete the edge loop complete. So I'm gonna delete that one, and that one, just to simplify the geometry so that we have some similar or a more consistent size in a way. All right. Now what we can do is make use of some of the new tools in ZBrush 2021. So I have a custom brush that I create called Retopo, and this really all it is you can now save. I don't know if it is, to be honest, I don't know if this is specific to 2021 or if you could do it beforehand. I just discovered in 2021 that you can actually save the settings of a C model brush. So you can take your C model brush and say, I want, you know, by default the faces to do this, the edges to do this other thing, and the vertex or the points do this other thing. So I do that. Well, I did that and I saved a new brush. So now this is my Retopology brush, because by default when I select that, when I right click on a face, it's set to do nothing, so I don't mess with the faces. The edge is set to extrude, which is the new function that is fantastic from 2021, and the point is set to move, right? So all of those settings, you can set them up and save a brush like that. So now I can just click and drag like that, and that is basically, actually, let's make sure that I don't move the camera. I can click and drag, and that basically extrudes that edge. I can hold the Alt key, or not hold it, just click once on the Alt key, and that will extrude the entire edge loop, and it will just snap. So just gonna do that, and I'm gonna try to connect this. So hold or click on Alt again. I'm gonna connect this one to this one, and you'll see it snaps, and now it is part of that. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Just try to figure out this topology. It's not gonna be the best, but we'll try. Right? Maybe we can go back to the C modeler, right click and add, insert, couple of loops. Let's start with, let's add a couple of loops. Again, this is just more manually thing. You can just fill this hole and do it with the C remesher, but again, the whole point is just to show you different things. So we'll deal with that and see what happens. Let's look at the Retopo. Right, and then obviously you can use the move brush. You don't have to resort just to that C modeler to rearrange this if you wanted to. I don't think this is gonna work. All right. Yeah, because we don't have the same number of loops, but oops. Move. All right. Yeah, so it's not the greatest topology, to be fair. But this is not gonna be the final topology anyway. I just wanted to feel that and show you the tools. But another thing you can do is right click on an edge, or let's use the C modeler. Right click on this edge, and I'm gonna click on fill or close hole, and I'm gonna use the convex hole. The concave hole is gonna give you a bunch of triangles, which you can also use if convex hole doesn't work, because again, this is not gonna be the final topology. Right, so you can do these type of things. Let's do the same thing here and add a few points. So that's just to close this. And This is not a great topology. Again, it's not the final one. All we want is to get some, close that basically with these loops in here. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Make sure that it's flat. Okay, so I'm gonna select the move brush. By the way, how are we doing with time? All right, plenty of time. Cool. So let's see. So I can hold Control and Shift. Actually, let's select the simula, right click on an edge, and I'm gonna select the poly group, and I'm gonna click on this, holding the Alt key, just to assign a different poly group, and assign a poly group to all of those things, or just those. And I need to make sure it's still good. So now with the move brush, what I'll do is I need to refine the edge loops so that we can let ZBrush figure out the rest. But we need to make sure that the certain edge loops are what we want. So I want this one, not these ones. Right, so I'm gonna group this. Same thing with this. Right, so this entire thing is going to be another one. So polygroup visible, and the rest, ZBrush can figure it out. Right, so this is the ones that we need. I'm gonna group visible. So basically, we're gonna let ZBrush figure out the rest based on these polygroups that we created. So from the ZRemesher, I'm gonna open up ZRemesher here, and let's do keep groups, detect edges. Maybe let's leave the topology same. Let's try to do it the same. It might not work with the same, so we just go back. Smoothing groups, let's just leave it 0. Zero mesh that, and I had symmetry enabled. So that kind of worked. Let's do it again. We have the same symmetry, so if you leave this same on, ZBrush is going to try to maintain obviously the same amount of polygons, but if you keep remeshing, it's just going to try to give you a different topology arrangement. So that one works a lot better. Just going to smooth that out. And you're probably thinking, oh, we lost that nice sort of concentric, points in here, but I'll show you that's not a big deal. We'll recover that in a second. So now we have that. And I can remember we started with a ZSphere, right? So I'm gonna just go back to the silhouette. Oh, it's looking pretty good. There's not much that I need to change. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. All right, so again, to recover that sort of circle, all I need to do really is hold Control and Shift, hide that one, delete hidden, done, and then use the C modeler, right click, and I showed you that before, close convex holes. I can click and drag, and then the longer I click towards the top and right, I can add multiple loops. So something like that. Use the Gizmo 3D again to make sure this is flat. All right, and just to keep it simple, I'm gonna give it a single polygroup. All right, so we now have that front of the guitar ready to go. Obviously, we need to do the thickness. So let's go again. You can, for example, just to give you more ideas, you can take these now, duplicate it, or hold Control and Shift to do these, right? So you have two of the same, and then you can bridge those two together. That's one option. We could do that. Or now that we have dynamic, we can enable dynamic, and we can add thickness with dynamic. So now the thickness is, we're not using the thickness for the entire kind of like shell of the guitar. We can do that after, but we're just doing it to add this, the thickness, the general thickness of the volume of the guitar. Of course, we can tweak things from here. We can remove the smoothing of the polygroups. So now literally this is just showing us an extrusion of that, and you'll see, maybe from this angle, you'll see that this is the middle point. That's what I was explaining before about the offset. So this middle point, if I enable dynamic, you see it is extruding from both sides. If I set the offset to be -100, it's just doing it towards the back, or vice versa. So let's just leave it at -100. Another thing you can do, obviously, we want to have more polygroups. You can do that after using the C-modeler, or you can do it straight from this dynamic using segments. So the segments is just going to add those loops in there, right? So that gives you a very clean set of mesh, or set of polyloops or topology that you can use, right? So great, that's it. Now I can go ahead and click on apply, and now we have a super clean mesh, right? We haven't opened it, so let's just duplicate that. And by the way, let's is this the other one that was working? I'm just gonna rename, yeah, I'm gonna rename this one. I'm gonna name it good one, and this one as well. Let's duplicate, hang on. So this is the same, this is the one that we just duplicated. Let's rename it good one 2. All right. Okay, so now let's select that one. What I'll do is, at this point, it's pretty much a cleaning up and repeating some of the processes. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift, select that, just to open that. And I think it's too big. So let's, I mean, you can create another polygroup, right? So that would be an easy way to do it. Just right click, polygroup, right? And do that. Or just to show you something else, you can hit that bit, and then from the visibility tab, you can just shrink or grow that visibility. And because it is a perfect loop, we can shrink it or grow it based on that, and we achieve the same result. And we can delete hidden, and now we have this cool clean mesh. Go back to the geometry and repeat the same process that we did before with the thickness. Use dynamic with obviously less thickness. We don't want any segments, of course. So this to 0. And add a few subdivision. 4, I think 4 is the one that we're using. All right, and of course we can add a few edge loops here. So let's select the insert from the C-modeler, click and drag, just to sharpen those, and that's how you can determine as well the amount of bevel. So pretty similar. Okay, and by the way, if I go closer, if you don't want to have this rounded edge here, we can right click, crease that, crease the entire edge loop, yep, and that we have that sharpness in there. Great, so now we have another pretty clean geometry, another body of a guitar that works quite nice. So again, we haven't done much other than showcasing a bunch of ways to go about it. So if you guys have questions about it, let me know in the chat. But again, we have this one that looks pretty good. Let's actually make them into a folder. Good ones. All right, so we have that one, we have that one, and we can, keep using all the bunch of techniques to create this. So I'm gonna show you a couple more that you could use. Again, just to see what works for you. Can you export the polygroups as ID maps to Substance Painter? Yep, as selection sets. Where is it? Plugin. See what I mean? I must have done something, because look at my plugin. I don't have enough tools. So let's just do a quick save. Actually, let me restart ZBrush. I'll be back in 2 seconds, because yeah, I'm missing a bunch of buttons that are useful. A bunch of things that I want to show you. So give me 1 second. All right. Now we have all the tools. So now we have my store camera and all of that. By the way, it was because my UI wasn't loading properly, but it is under the draw palette, so I wasn't going too crazy. Polypaint, polygroups, yep, you can do that, right? Absolutely. You can just you don't have to convert it to polypaint. You can just keep the polygroups. So if you want to just use this as selection or an ID map to select things in Substance, you can go to the zip plugin, go to the FBX export. When you are going to export this as an FBX, from the options you can set export polygroups as materials or as selection sets, right? Depending on your workflow, and that basically will export that. It will keep that data. All right, let's use a couple more ways to achieve these things. So yeah, you can totally use the, now that I think of, let's make a select a sphere, and where is, oh, I have to reload our reference. All right, so if you go to the geometry palette, I think it was Comics Legend that was talking about this. You can totally use the Shadowbox. So if I enable Shadowbox, maybe with less resolution, right? This is what we get because we haven't painted anything. But roughly there, clear the mask, and it's going to solo. And I'm going to use the mask lasso. So the resolution here on the Shadowbox determines basically the resolution of what you're going to create. So I'm going to hold Control and basically draw this. Right? So now I can get out of that and I can rotate around. Obviously nothing happens because we haven't giving it any thickness. So from this angle now, we can go ahead and select the mask rectangular piece and hold Control and Shift, and then this is going to determine the thickness of the guitar, something like that, right? And in theory, because we have solo mode, let's turn this off. Right, so now you see this is a super quick way to generate the same thing that we've been doing, and this one should have also polygroups when you finish. So yeah, let's turn off Shadowbox. Done. So that's just a pretty quick way to do the same thing, the same process, and we can use the same tool that we used before. I'm gonna go a little bit faster here because we already talked about a few things here. Flatten that, scale it up a bit. Right, so pretty clean mesh to start with. Let's do half adaptive. Didn't have the, hang on, undo that. Keep groups, detect edges, symmetry off. And that is pretty much it. We have another nice and clean topology that we can work with. And again, you can create, let me just show you how can you do this in an easy way. I mean, you could have done the whole directly from that shadow box, but now that you have this, maybe just to show you something else, I'm going to use the C modeler. Oh, actually, let's just do something different. Just remember, so you can hold Control and Shift and select something like the slice circle. So this slice circle is basically going to give you a slice of geometry, whatever you put it, right? And symmetry is not going to affect it. So you can create that, right? I'm going to hold Control and Shift and isolate this. Let's enable our reference. We might have to tweak the silhouette a little bit, but now I'm going to hold Control and Shift, click and drag. You can also press the spacebar to reposition this, and that is slice through that mesh. Bring back the rest. It's not great because of the amount of symmetry of resolution we have, but in this case the other side kind of worked, so we can mirror it and weld everything, right? So we only have it in this area, so we can now go to the ZBrush. I don't have these tools in my UI because I don't use it often, but we can make the same thing, keep edges, groups, and ZBrush the whole thing. Or yeah, let's hang on. I'm gonna actually delete that part before I do anything. So delete hidden. Right. So I just use the slice curve to create that, you know, kind of like perfect circle. Delete that polygroup, and now I can remesh without it to get a cleaner topology. Symmetry on. Great. Smooth that. So I know this might be a little bit boring just because I'm doing the same thing over and over, but at this point you just go dynamic, right? Oh, by the way, something else you can do if you don't want to do the edges here is to either crease those edges or right click and you can bevel this entire thing. You can bevel this like that and then click on the other side, and ZBrush will remember that, and you have polygroups in the edges as well. So now we can add a bit of thickness. All right. Excellent. So we now have another guitar. This is a dynamic thing, right? So we could potentially just add, oops, right click, insert, just add another edge loop there, and we are actually just affecting the low res. So we can go to brush palette again, just to adjust the silhouette with dynamic on, so we get the smoothness of it. Something like that. All right, and then go to depth, infinite depth, lock that camera, make sure symmetry is on, and just adjust that silhouette. So another way, the polishing techniques at the end end up being very similar, but the creation process is, or the way that you set up the mesh is pretty different. All right, so we now have another good one for the pile. So let's call it 3. Can be bothered to name it. Oops, 3. We need more than 4 letters. And just chuck that in there. Great. Cool. So we have that another one. Anyway, that was just with the shadow box. The other form, or the other way that I was gonna show you, is pretty cool as well. I'm gonna append a plane, and then after that we just we work with the neck of the guitar so that we end up with something more interesting than just the body of it. Okay, so this is just a plane. We can actually, I'm just thinking there's so many things and so many ways to do it. I'm gonna duplicate the plane. I'm gonna show you something else. So in this plane first, the first idea that I had was to use some of the brushes. So we can click on these curved tree fill, or curved tree fill is an insert mesh brush. So what this one does is create a curve, and anything that is in between that curve or inside the curve is going to be filled with geometry. So you know, it's pretty simple once you know those tools. So all I'm going to do now is create something like this just by going like that. Done. And then because this is a curve, we can go to the stroke palette, we can lock start and the end, right? And then we can just adjust the curve, and you see how ZBrush automatically readjusts that geometry. So this is, you know, is one of the tools that it's incredible to add assets and, you know, sketch things in ZBrush. It's not, I don't see a lot of people using it, but it's fantastic. So I thought I should share it. All right, accept that by clicking somewhere there and unmask that one. So now we have this mesh. I only worried on one side, or only worried to create one side, because now we can mirror and weld the other side. We have polygroups. Let's scale this a bit just to give the thickness of it. And that is pretty much it. Also, I think we didn't. Okay, so let's it's a little bit crooked just because the movement, I forgot to enable the snap in the curve, so I actually pushed it in. It's not a big deal. We can mask this area, invert the mask, select the gizmo, flatten that. Same thing here. All right, so now we have that body, and you know the drill. We can just go ahead and go to the ZRemesher. Now that we have polygroups, we want to keep polygroups. We want to smooth. So detect edges, keep polygroups, smooth the groups. Let's keep it simple, save. ZRemesher. That changes things too much, so smooth groups to 0. And now we have a nice, you know, another nice bass of the guitar. And you know, for the mesh in the middle, the circle in the middle, you can do, or the hole, you can do similar process. So that's just another way to do it. Now there is also something else you can do. So that was with the curve fill brush that works really well for this type of organic shapes, right? You can also use another brush that is the quad fill. So the quad fill is the same thing, but it just gives you quads. So it's gonna try to maintain those quads to a degree. Yeah, so you get more quads, and I don't know if it actually does it. Yeah, that's the idea. That's not the one that I want to show you. Forgot what it is. I lost it. Yeah. Well, you can use this one as well. So this curve snap, what you can do is do this type of things, and it's just gonna snap. So if you want to create a nice loop, maybe let's do it. Let's just do it so that you can see what this one allows you to do. It's similar to what we did, for example, with the ZSpheres, in a way. right? So you can start, let's say here, maybe like that, and then do I'm gonna change the snap. I forgot what this one was. Function, lazy mouse. I forgot what this is. This thing is. So there's a snapping of that curve. Okay. This one is not the greatest one, but it's just another tool, right? So you could do that potentially, split. Select that and then just mirror and weld, right? And then use the move brush to adjust all of that. I'm just adjusting one of the sides. And I can just push all the geometry. Again, all of this is kind of like sketchy. Just push that over the middle line. And smoothing as well. Right, and then you can just use mirror and weld and then smooth that out. And then go through the process of redynameshing and that sort of thing. So different ways. The last one that I can think of right now, I mean, there's probably a lot more ways to do this, is with, actually, I just thought about another one. Can you shadowbox way so that people who haven't seen it in action will be able to learn about it too? You have time? Yeah, I mean the shadowbox, there's not much to it. It's just it's like Dynamesh really. Whatever object you select, if you select a sphere, I'll show you in a second. It's pretty simple, so it wouldn't take too long. But with this plane, one more way that you can go about it is to, let's just divide and delete lower, just to add more resolution to this plane, maybe even more. Hold Control and Shift, and you can use something like the trim lasso. So now basically you draw a lasso around the area that you want, and that trim that out. That's not what I wanted. Let's undo that. I'm gonna trim the outside rather. So let's do that. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Okay, not the trim lasso then. You know what? I think we can just get away with a simple select lasso. So let's just keep it simple. I'm gonna delete that, use the select lasso. Right, and select something like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and use polygroups. So auto group. Basically what I did there, just to generate a different polygroup so that we can use something like polish by groups. So that's going to give us a very sharp line, maybe something more than that. Right, I can mirror and weld just to get the full shape. Now I can hide this one, delete hidden. Oh, I think I split hidden. Doesn't matter. Perfect. So now that I have these, I can just go ahead and remesh that. Oops, don't have symmetry enabled. Let's do a polish by groups again. Well, at this point, there's no groups, it doesn't matter. Right, now the polish. All right, so now we have that base. It's pretty good. To generate the thickness, we can use the C modeler as well. Right click, Q mesh, polygroup all, click and drag to generate that thickness. To add edge loops in here, we can do it manually by holding Control and Shift and select the slice curve. So we can do these type of things, holding Shift to snap, right? To add polygroups in the middle. Or we can right click, insert multiple edge loops, and that way we have a consistent gap, right? And again, doing the whole is it's pretty much the same thing as I've been showing you. Do you have any coupon for the TEM course? No, there's no coupons for the courses, unfortunately, for many reasons, but mainly because I already have students that paid full price, so I'm not gonna, offer any discount. Plus, I prefer to add value rather than discount something. So for the next opening, which is happening hopefully, I'm not entirely sure, but so don't take this as a set date, but early next month or mid next month, I will open up the enrollment for the TEM course. So the price is gonna be the same thing, and it's gonna be the kind of like the last time that I'm gonna offer it at that price. The price is gonna go up just because I keep adding resources and content, so it's just growing. So next time it will be the same price, and the added value, or the extra thing that I'm gonna include is an introduction and an overview to a couple of renders for the same process that I teach in the course, like Cycles and Eve from Blender, and the Maverick render that I've been using quite a bit lately. So again, it's like, instead of discounting something, especially for the reasons that I mentioned, I prefer to just add that value, additional stuff. By the way, just before I forget, and this is just for the beginners in ZBrush, and in case you're not in my email list or you haven't seen your email, if you go to the 3D Concept Artist website and you go to courses, you go down here to the bottom, there is this one called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. So this is the one that I've been working for the past few years, and it's coming along really nicely. This is what the character that we've been creating, but it's gonna take someone that has no idea about ZBrush at all, from zero all the way to rendering, compositing, posing the character, and everything. So everything is in the course, and everything is very systematic. So in the meantime, while because the course is coming soon, it's not finished yet. If you go to the ZBrush Guide, the 3D Concept Artist website, go to courses, click on Stay in the Loop, and you will be taken to this page. This is a starter kit that I put together. Again, this is aimed for beginners, but if you already have experience with ZBrush and you just want to grab it as well, you're welcome. You're welcome to go ahead and do it. Basically, it's a starter kit for new artists to ZBrush, and the starter kit includes 10 brushes that I made specifically for simplifying certain things. They're very, very simple, very close to the basic brushes that come with ZBrush, with some little tweaks that I do myself for what I think might help people to get started and get a result faster. You get this UI that is a custom UI that I actually systematically build in the course itself that I'm gonna share hopefully soon when it's ready. So you get that as well. You get 5 materials, and you get this Ultimate ZBrush Guide, the cheat sheet, which is basically a set of shortcuts that ZBrush uses, and something that you can print out, put it in front of your computer. Again, if you're new to it, and then just learn the shortcuts, which is pretty useful. So yeah, just go to this starter kit. Pretty sure I can just share the link in here if you guys want to. And just put your name and email, and you'll be registered. So I will let you know when it's ready, and then you get all the extra tips and tricks that I share. This is, again, if you're not, if you're really new to ZBrush and you want to get started with that, that will be one way to do it. And if not, if you know someone that might be benefit from it, you can also share it with them. All right, so let's go ahead and do, I'm gonna select, I think, let's see which one works. I don't know, what do you reckon? What's the best one out of all of these ones? I reckon this one is pretty good. I'm gonna use this one as my, the one that I'm gonna actually use. So we're gonna use that as a reference, and let's go ahead and do the bridge, not the bridge, the neck of the guitar. Comics Legend, is this email separate from your email tips? You have to sign up again. No, I will. If you're already part of the list, I will let you know when it's ready. But if you sign up for this, I will send you specific emails related to that course, right? Because again, my email list is full of different levels of knowledge in ZBrush. So if you don't have to sign up again. If you just put your email, it's just to send you the email so that I know which email I need to send that that guide. But it's not like you're gonna double it up in emails, if that makes sense. So it's not, you're not registering to a whole new list. But if you register for that one, you'll get additionally to the tips, you get a specific emails about that course, so that I don't, But if you don't want to, you still receive the tips anyway. Esfredo, the character in the course are game ready? No, the course is mostly for concept creation. Yep, I mean they're not game ready, because again, game ready means that the shading part and the look dev and all of that is ready for a specific engine, or that the topology and everything is animation ready as well, and it's optimized and that sort of thing. However, the course is focused on the workflows. So if you want to, you can actually take all the experience of the course and everything that you've learned from the course and target kind of like the game engine in a way. So it's not that it's not specifically for that. So my aim at the end is to create a portfolio illustration piece based on the character. But for example, the character that I do in the final, kind of like the final image of the course, is rendered as well in Marmoset, which emulates real-time engine. So I teach all of that. So making maps, exporting maps, doing Substance Painter for the low res, projecting the details, all of that, which you would use in in a game ready character. It's just that the end result is not necessarily something that you will have as an animated character and that sort of thing. But I cover all of those concepts. All right, let's we have about 20 minutes, so let's do the neck of the guitar. I'm gonna append again. This is another option to explore a bunch of different things. So I'm gonna go ahead and append a cylinder. Let's start with that. And I'm going to scale that down. So now actually what I need to do is reduce the size of my reference so that I can see the length of it. So let's try to find the placement of this guitar, something like that. And I'm gonna actually store a camera now. Oops, I need to enable perspective, store camera. Let's call it reference. Log that now, and now I can scale these to find kind of like the thickness of it. I'm gonna push this forward so I can see the full width. Okay, something like that. All right, and now I'm gonna scale these. If you want to be precise, what you can do is hold the Alt key. Just try to position this at the bottom. It's not super precise, but just it allows you to just control that height without worrying too much about the rest. Okay. Great. All right, so that's the basis of it. Obviously, this has some sort of tapering, which you can use the taper deformer. It has some like a rounded edge at the bottom and a flat edge where the kind of like the fingerboard type of area is. Right, so you could do that. Also, I'm going to show you something else. Actually, that's pretty cool. Gotta go to solo mode. Get out of this. I'm gonna delete. Actually, before I delete, let's do the flattening of this. So let's push this one forward just so that we can see what we're doing. Bring in the gizmo, and I'm gonna bring in the flatten deformer. I'm gonna flatten this. Don't want to have symmetry now, so let's set it to 0. And just flattening it like that. I think so. I think this would work. All right, and let's click accept. So what I want to do is I'm going to remove the caps with the select rectangular, the caps of this tube, right? So this one in here, same thing in there. So now, yeah, I have these two. I'm going to invert that, and I'm going to delete hidden. Delete hidden just because they didn't have the topology that I needed. All right. Now, what we can do is you can, like I said, you can taper all of these, and that would be probably one of the methods I could use. But I'm going to delete this thing in the middle, and you might think, why? It was looking all right. But it's because the curvature and the tapering is not consistent, so it starts like, at least the reference that or what I have in my head, it starts a little bit like thicker, and it just flattens towards the towards like the head of the guitar, like the I forgot the names of the thing where the tuning pegs are, right? So in that case, what I'll do is I'm just gonna push this one like that, closer to the guitar. There we go. And I can go ahead and control mask this area, invert the mask, center to the unmasked areas. And what I'll do is I'm going to hold the Alt key and make sure that this is right at the edge in there. Go back to my camera, bring in the reference, and now I'm going to scale this down. Something like that. It's not too much actually, like the difference, right? So that allows me to basically scale it from the center, or from the like the flat area, right? And also it's smaller, right? But also now that I still have the other part masked, right? I can go ahead and scale this like so, and this is roughly what sort of happens. I forgot the names. Anyway, what is it? The whatever, the head of the guitar. So it's just gonna be flat. I'm gonna flatten that a little bit like that. So I feel that that's roughly what it should be. Okay, so now we'll go to solo mode, clear my mask. So all I did was a tube that had this sort of that I flattened that shape, and then I split it into those two pieces, but the geometry is the same, so we can do a bridge, right? So let's use the move brush. Oh, doesn't matter. I'm gonna hold control and click and mask that area, or the points here at the bottom. Let's get closer, and I'm just gonna push them up, right, just to create a little edge in there. I'm gonna do the same thing in here, although in this area it doesn't really matter, but let's just center to the unmasked areas. It's hard to see, but it's there, trust me. I'm just gonna extrude these about there, right? So we have a kind of like a consistent shape in there. We're gonna come back to this and fix it. because this is hollow actually. Now that I think of. Anyway, we'll think about how to do it in a second. Just wanna scale it like so. All right, so now we have those two pieces and we can bridge them. So now this is gonna be the tricky part. Select the C modeler, and I'm gonna make sure I select the same edge in both sides so that it doesn't get flipped or anything. So I'm gonna right click on this edge on the border, click on bridge, two holes, and I'm gonna click on that again. There we go. And now go to this one right here. This is what I said, it's gonna be tricky to get to it, but I'm gonna click on it. There we go. So now we have that topology, and you'll see we have the nice sort of tapering effect that is consistent in both sides. Yeah, so that looks cool, right? And of course, there's a little bit of a hinge or an area. Again, I forgot the whole thing, but you could do something there. Let's think about it actually. What would be the best way to do it? I'm gonna duplicate that so that in case I ruin it, I don't lose a lot. I'm gonna hold Control and Shift and hide these edges. Yep, I think that might do the trick actually. I'm gonna delete that, delete hidden, and again use the C modeler. Right click, C modeler, right click, and first I'm gonna bridge two edges. So I'm gonna bridge this one with this one. Right, so we have that in there. Now let's think this one through. So we had a cylinder that by default should have 32 edges in here. Actually, let's do it easier. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13. So we could potentially just do that here. We can split this edge. Insert multiple edge loops. Click and drag, and then can like recreate the same number. I don't know if it's gonna be the same number, to be honest. We'll try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Doesn't matter. Right click. We're gonna close concave, and there we go. So something like that, just to add a bit of edges in there. Same thing in here. And again, this is not the final topology. This is just to set it up. We're gonna use the C modeler probably. Sorry, the C remesher like we did for the previous one. Okay, so now what we can do is try to find or establish some polygroups so that we can run the C remesher and have a nicer topology than this. Can you play us a song on your guitar to end up the show? Sure, I can. Now we have 10 minutes. Don't have time for a concert today, fortunately. I'll do it next time. All right, something like that. Alrighty, so what did I say? Okay, so I want to try to use the polygroups by normals and see what happens. So that should give me what I need really. So we have one polygroup there, another there. Yeah, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I need. Let's just close this one up, or yeah, let's close it, and then we'll open it if we need to. Close. The only thing is visible. All right, so we need a single polygroup in there. Now, before I do any of that or any of the C remesher, I'm gonna duplicate it again just in case, and I'm gonna use move brush. let's use the move brush. And I'm gonna add what I mentioned before. So I can use the same tool that I showed you at the beginning, this infinite depth, but because the infinite depth by default works in the z-axis, I want to use the x-axis. So I can just click on this tiny text or letters inside the switch, and that changes. So I can do this, and it will do it, you know, with infinite depth basically. So I can do that. I can also probably, I should just mask the other pieces so I don't affect them, and this one as well. All right. So basically all I'm doing here is just destroying the topology a little bit, but the whole point is just to get that curvature. And I'm not worried about, you know, the topology too much, because that's the whole point of the ZBrush after we have the shape. You could have created this as well with the Shadowbox, right? So okay, and I'm gonna turn this infinite depth, make sure I have symmetry enabled, and this time I'm just gonna adjust these points a bit more. All right, something like that. We probably need, you know what, I'm going to push this even further and then bring in the deformer again, the flat deformer, and then just flatten that piece like so, and then also slice that piece. Great. So I think that works. Now we can go to solo again, just in case we can duplicate that. So I usually do this quite a bit, because a lot of the things that I do sometimes is just testing. So if it doesn't work, I can come back easily to the other mesh. Let's go to the ZBrush. I have symmetry enabled, and we want to keep groups. We probably don't need to smooth anything because they're pretty clean distinctions of the polygroups. Detect edges, definitely adapt. Let's try half and ZBrush that. Brilliant. It's pretty good. And just before I do another ZBrush, I'm going to clean this up by actually deleting that. Delete hidden. Use the ZBrush to close it. Group visible. And also flatten that bit. We need an extra loop here, so I'm gonna hold Control and extrude that as well. So a bunch of different things. Smooth this as well, and also we can flatten this one. That looks a little bit weird. You won't see it, but you can select that, mask it, give it that mask, bring in the gizmo, center to the unmasked areas, and then just flatten that as well. So that looks alright. Let's try to do it the same thing with adapt and half. Yep, and now we preserve that sort of flat area about there. And that's it. I think this looks pretty good actually. I'm happy with that. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm gonna leave it there because we don't have much time. We have 2 minutes. I'll show you the shadow box in a second. Go to geometry, dynamic, and of course there are a few things that we can do to make sure that this doesn't look as horrible. So let's mask that area, bring in the gizmo, center it. I'm gonna add more thickness to it. You won't see this anyway, it's kind of like embedded in the guitar. All right, so nice smooth areas. Something we can do actually very quickly is, since we have nice set of polygroups, is go to the crease section, and we can say crease PG, which is polygroups, and that will crease the borders of all the polygroups. So now we have a nice smooth and sharp edges as well. If you don't like that level of sharpness, you can change the where is it? Let's change the bevel. No, that wasn't there. I forgot how to do it. No, we don't want bevel. We want to, let's uncrease all. Crease by polygroups. It's too sharp. So let's undo that and just bevel. Nah, it's not working. All right, let's just keep it simple. Polygroups. We come back to it if we need to. But I think overall, I think it's looking pretty decent. It's pretty smooth and clean topology. So that's looking pretty good. And we're using dynamic in both of those things. The good one that we call the good one, and this one. So I'm just gonna put all of these pieces in there, kind of like the originals. And let's rename that. All right, so we have the guitar pieces are actually these two. All right, click save. And if I do a quick BPR, we have a nice topology as well. It looks a little bit like artifacts, and that's just because this thing has the thickness. But overall, I'm happy with this progress, and hopefully next session I can show you, a bit more of these, a few other techniques, maybe to do the headstock. That's right, the headstock. Maybe we can do. I mean, this is the idea is to create like a classical guitar, but we can do the kind of like this area for the pick guard type of thing, which sometimes they have like a different material, more for acoustic guitars, I would say, but we could do that sort of thing as well. Also, the mastil, good to know. Excellent. All right, perfect, guys. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. Just again to wrap it up, and if you're interested in that sort of process of the Shadowbox, which is pretty powerful, I'm gonna use this cone as an example. Basically, Shadowbox, you can think about it as Dynamesh. So if you go to Shadowbox, right, it's pretty much the same thing as Dynamesh. You see, this object that I have in here is a primitive object. If I enable Dynamesh, it just turns this into Dynamesh, right? So undo that. It's the same thing. If I enable Shadowbox, it's gonna happen. It's gonna do the same process. It's gonna turn it into a Dynamesh object, but it's gonna also enable the planes, the X, Y, and Z planes, so that you can control the shape of the Dynamesh with a mask. That's all it is. And the resolution works in the same way. So if I enable this is a 128. This one is 128 as well. So Shadowbox, you see, it gives me the same thing. Right now I have solo mode. Yep, I have solo mode, and that means ZBrush is displaying kind of like that virtual plane only. But if I disable it, now I see that mesh, right? And the resolution is for these planes in here, not for what you see or like the volume, if that makes sense. So the 128 it refers to these points on those planes, right? If I toggle it off and maybe decrease that and do it again, you see it just changes the amount of points, right? So that's basically how it works. You can do that from any mesh, or start with any mesh that you want. Click on Shadowbox like if you would with Dynameshing, and it will generate those planes based on the resolution you set, and the masking will create that shape. So I can clear the mask, right, and do anything. I use this quite a bit as well. Actually, let's go back. and let's do a shadow with a lot more resolution. Clear the mask. I usually use these for like ornaments and that sort of thing, so I can, you know, create something like this. I mean, this is nothing, but you'll get the idea. Maybe from the other side. So this is just using the mask. I don't know, something like that. Right, and this is basically giving me that silhouette, right? You have all those details, and then from this angle I can determine, you know, I can do something crazy like and this is going to determine the profile of that shape, right? So we have like something really complex, and then yeah, let's just leave it like that, right? And we're happy with that. We click on Shadowbox to get out of that kind of like Dynamesh Shadowbox thing, and we end up with this. And we have polygroups as well, right? And then, you know, we can do just polish that mesh, and do a clay polish as well. And if you want, you can remesh this. This is a pretty complex mesh for ZBrush. Let's just, for the sake of demonstration, let's see what happens. It's going to be pretty complicated just because there's a lot of holes. So when you have a hole in your mesh, that is actually a complex. Like even if it's just a cube, but you have a hole going through the cube, it is meant to be like a hard shape to figure out for the ZBrush in general. So this one is a pretty complex mesh, to be honest. But let's see. Just out of curiosity, I want to see what it gives me. And this is without symmetry or anything. It's a very organic and asymmetrical piece. Yeah, it's taking a while. Anyway, let's see if that finishes on time. Give it a few more minutes. But yeah, so while this finishes, if you guys are part of the email list, I will definitely let you know when the extra mile opens again. Like I said, it's probably going to be the last time that I open it at the price that I've been opening it, because now it has grown too much, and I keep adding you know, value to it and stuff like that. So I need to sort of compensate with the time that I spend on that as well. And if you want to know about the Ultimate ZBrush Guide, that's the course that is coming up. That's for ultimate, you know, it's the ultimate guide, meaning that it is focused on beginners, showing everything about ZBrush, and the focus is more about the methodology of learning ZBrush, which ultimately can be applied to any other software, and that's what I use personally. I've been learning Blender and other software as well, so I use the same methodology, the same approach to learn something new. So it's not just limited to ZBrush. Of course, the whole course is about ZBrush and understanding ZBrush, but I would argue that if you get comfortable with ZBrush and the UI and how it works, you are on, I mean, any other software will be pretty easy, because I know at first it could be quite overwhelming. So that's the focus really of the course, and of course doing a cool looking character and learning some of the processes and the things that I've been showing you, for example, today, but in a more systematic way, and understanding in what stages of the process you could use those tools, and how build your own workflow as well. So that's the idea, roughly. But yeah, I'll let you know as soon as it's finished. It will be definitely before the end of the year, but I can say for sure. All right, I'm gonna leave it here because this I was expecting this to crash. So it is, like I said, it's a pretty complex shape. Oh, look at that! It finished right on time. Great. So now we have a cleaner mesh, a zero mesh that we can keep remeshing. But doing this like by hand or with a C model or something like that, it will be crazy. So definitely for certain things like that, creating, you know, using the shadow box is incredibly powerful. All right, guys, so I'm going to leave it here and I will see you next week. Have a good one.